Hello everybody and welcome back to Nerdy Miniatures, and in today's video we return to the good side of the War of the Rohirrim army, the hero of the new War of the Rohirrim movie and the bride of death, Hera. This video will be broken up into two parts, first the building phase and then the painting phase. These will be indicated by the timestamps, so feel free to jump around as you wish. Anyway, let's get into the video. First, let's start with the build. For the build of Hera, overall she was pretty simple. Once we had all the correct pieces glued together, she came together rather easily. Something we liked about this particular character was they gave us two options for her shield. First, a shield fit for any warrior of the Rohan, and second was the option of Olwen's broken shield, fitting for any shield maiden. In the end, we decided on the complete shield. Despite being a little bit fiddly, this resin figure came together rather easily, and in the end, it took no time at all. By this point, you guys know the drill. I sprayed the base with grey Seer spray paint, I used one coat and left it to dry for 15 minutes. I then went in all over the dress with a light wash of Nuln Oil and let it sink in to all the holes and crevices. I did this to begin the process of adding depth to the otherwise entirely off-white dress that we see Hera wear in the movie. Whilst this dried, I moved on to the skin, painting it in a light shade of Gulliman Flesh, and left it to dry. Whilst that dried down, I painted the underside of the dress with Basilicanum Grey to create an effect of a shadow. I then went back in on the dress with grey Seer to brighten up the dress a little without taking too much away from the depth that I'd already added. Then it was time to move on to the shield. For the outer part of the shield, I used Air Mournfang Brown. For the sun design on the shield's middle, I mixed 2 colours. I used Zandri Dust and Bad Moon Yellow, but of course you guys can use a more muted shade of yellow to do this, but I used what I had to hand. With a small brush, I painted these small shapes. Once dry, I moved on to the metal rim and centre of the shield. For this, I used Leadbelcher and the smallest brush I own. Now it came time to my favourite part, Hera's hair. For this, I used Magmadroth Flame and Air Mournfang Brown, just to meet the vibrancy of the orange-red colour just a little bit. Over the grey Seer base, this looked really cool, and it turned out really well. Whilst that coat dried down, I moved on to the boots, as well as the cuffs and gloves on Hera's hands. For this, I used Abaddon Black. Whilst this dried, I went in with the next coat on the dress. For this, I used a mixture of grey Seer and Vallejo Monocolor in white and a small amount of water. Moving back onto the cuffs and boots, and of course finally her belt. I went over this with a small brush and Retributor Armour. After this dried, I went in with a different brand of paint. This one is from Gamecraft and in a metallic shade that is called Blue Steel. But you can use any metallic blue or turquoise shade that you have to hand. I'm sure it would look just as good, if not better. Whilst I still had the Retributor Armour out, I decided to paint the hilts of Hera's sword as well as the crown on her head. This sword is potentially Heragrim, the sword that later goes on to become Theoden's sword, as this sword is in fact an heirloom of the royal line of Rohan. For the core of the sword, I used Basilicanum Grey, and for the outside, I used a diluted wash of Leadbelcher. It was then time to go back to the dress, but this time it was time to dry brush. For this, I used a mixture of grey Seer and a very small amount of Abaddon Black. I dusted this across the creases of the dress and then her boots, as well as the flowy sleeves on the dress. Now it was time to move on to the highlights and the finishing touches. For the highlights on the dress, the furs and Hera's collar, and for the whites of her eyes, I used my tried and true Bellagio white and a very small brush. I did the actual corners of her eyes off camera because I wanted to be able to focus without getting a camera in the way of my vision, but in the end I ended up using a lovely shade of blue called Frostheart and a very small brush, and for the first time I successfully managed to use this method to draw on her eyes. Now it was time to finish this miniature off by doing the base. For this I used 2 colours and I did 2 coats. I combined technical paints, Stirland Mud and Astro Granite to create a greyish brown shade. I quite generously applied this product and left it to dry for around 30 to 45 minutes, as I wanted to be sure that this product was completely set before I attempted to add glue and then some fake snow that I'd use for Helm's build. But that is it. This is Hera. I'm actually pretty happy with how this figure turned out. Fingers crossed, I'll only continue to get better and better at this with each figure I build along the way. So what is next, I hear you ask? In the next video, we'll be painting the last of our resin figures, the Lord who betrays the King of Rohan. Of course we are talking about Lord Thorn. So if that interests you, then be sure to tune in again for that video. If you made it this far into the video, we do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this kind of content, then might I recommend you subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on any future videos. You will find 2 links in the description down below. The first to Mr. Nerd's channel, so if you enjoy MMOs and action RPGs, then might I recommend giving that one a watch. And if you enjoy all things Lord of the Rings and fantasy, then might I recommend taking a look at the second link, which is the link to my channel, where I cover all things Tolkien, Game of Thrones, as well as Age of Sigmar and The Witcher. Anyway, that'd be it from me today. Hope you guys have a wonderful day or night wherever you are in the world. And as always, peace out.